Great. Here we are. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Chiara. How are you?
Very good. We're in different time zones, right? You're in Canada and I'm in Sweden. So 6 hours difference, I think we have. So that's probably
Yeah,
because the light, it's nearly dark here and it's beautiful and sunny. Stay where you are.
it's cloudy, but it's a soft light, so that's very nice.
Very nice indeed. So we're both coaches, but we serve different type of clients and clientele, but we do have a lot of stuff in common. And when we're talking, we realized that actually the red thread is about helping people in transition, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people are in. I mean, right now we are in a very special period, a historical period, and it's not. A lot of people have lost their jobs, but at the same time, I think as we touched upon in our last conversation, every time you come to a crossroads, it's also an opportunity for change. And some people may want to transition and move on to something else. It's fine. It may finally have granted them that that pushes them out of that comfort of what I call plan B.
Yeah.
When you have a plan A plan, it's the grand plan of, this is my dream career. But a plan B plan is kind of something you just settle in and you just kind of
Mhm.
land into by accident, and then you keep doing it. You've spent 5 or 10 years in that career path, and you
Yes.
decide, hey, it's time. I don't really like it. It pays the bills. I'm comfortable. I always wonder about this, and now is a lot of time. Now is the time for a lot of people to make that transition, to make that jump, because they're finally pushed out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, in some cases, people still have their job. It's just that the conditions around them change so much because maybe before they were going every day to the office and now they're looking at the job with very different eyes. So they are actually, forcing themselves somehow to rethink, is this really what I want, or is it something that I would choose again, or do I want to do something different, which is really interesting.
Precisely. Uh, and I think, in terms of personalities, right? So one of the things I work a lot with is different personalities, and introverts in particular are, when the lockdown first happened, a lot of introverts are telling me like, this is heaven. This is awesome. I don't have to deal with so many people. I can
Yeah.
actually sit down and get my work done. And and at the same time, extroverts of course are suffering.
Yeah.
But I think it's a time for a lot of people to finally realize, like, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. There's a
Mm,
different path. And I
right.
think and therefore I think it's a very, economy is bad, and a lot, and health, there's a health crisis and all that. But if you look at the silver linings, there are opportunities out there that are coming out.
Yeah, and actually, I was talking to a client the other day, and sometimes this confirmation bias really put us in a bad place because we believe, oh, nobody finds a job. I lost my job and I'm never going to be able to find a job because we're in a crisis. And I'm like, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But the reality is that there is a lot of businesses that are thriving. So
Yeah.
you could also look at those businesses, and those are hiring and developing and expanding. Now, it might not be the majority, but it doesn't help, right? To find those excuses to ourselves instead of being out there and convinced that, of course, if you want to find a job, you can find. It's so much in our brains. And our brains is so lazy, right? That it doesn't help us
Mm.
finding things out there. Instead, it says, oh, no, it's pointless for me to go and look out and search because everybody is in the same crisis.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think you're right. It depends on the industry, and a lot of companies that have put off restructuring for a long time have
Yes.
finally used this as their opportunity to restructure, to re-upgrade, to upgrade, and to change some things, which would mean, some people would be let go. Um, but at the same time, there are opportunities that, some businesses are like totally thriving, as you were saying, and
Mhm.
those businesses are looking to hire, especially remote workers. And
Right.
so,
Yes.
I mean, it really depends. Now, from what are you finding right now in terms of transitions, and what are your clients dealing with in this process?
So my clients are mainly middle-aged people that somehow feel like I've checked all the boxes.
Mm.
I have a house, I have a nice job, I have a good family, and now what? And the reality is that, you still have 40 years ahead of you that you can be productive and bring value to this world. But the instinct for them is to look backwards and decide and think, who am I today based on what they've done in the past? And so what I like to do them is make them that transition to turn your back to your past and start looking forward again, like you did when you were in your 20s or in your early days of your life. There was always something you were aiming for. But it's
Mm.
so difficult. We really need to be intentional and force ourselves to look again to the future, to look forward and decide that nothing is written yet. Everything you want to do in your life, you can still do. And there is this little voice, the subconscious voice, that it tells you you're too old for that. You're not rich enough, or you're not beautiful enough, or you're not thin enough, you're not rich enough, whatever it is that prevents us to take that step and still say, hey, why not? Let's try. Like you were doing when you were in your teenagers or early 20s. So that transition to reevaluate and redecide for yourself, because your life is still long. You're going to still want to produce, and you can't live just from your past. Because what are you going to do that for the next 40 years? You're going to look for what you've done 10, 20 years ago? That's pretty depressing. And I think, so what I like to talk to my clients about is really how we're wired and how our primitive brain forces us to stay safe, convinces us that it's better to stay here and not take any risk, not lose our face, or to risk to lose our face. And it's really interesting that we are instead intentional and still put goals in our life, quarterly, yearly goals, 10 years goals, to live an exciting life. And you, what are your transitioning
I mean, I think
generations?
the people that I work with are, in 20s to 40s. That's the age range that, and I know for this is a podcast, but people can't see my face, but I look super young. I look like I'm 20 something, but I'm actually closer to 40, right? I'm actually close to 40. And when I deal with the people that I work with, a lot of times it's people who uh, with regrets, people who feel stuck, people who have transitioned or gotten their education in something that they realize that, hey, I don't want to actually do this. I've done this for a number of years now. Some of them may have worked for 3 years and realize, like, I hate this. I hate my job. I want to switch to a different career path, and I help them figure that out. Some people who are, some people, the oldest client that I've worked with is 50, in his 50s. And he's like, yeah, he's worked in that industry for a while, in the IT industry for a while. And he's like, hey, I'm on my last run. And there are a lot of young guns coming into the industry, and I'm threatened by these young guns because they've got the latest and greatest, and whatever computer training that I've had was like 30 years ago, kind of thing. And so we work through that. It's like, hey, to gain that clarity. So the course that I work with, that I teach, is Career Clarity Mastery, and the core is to gain that clarity, to figure out what is the next step. And for that client, the 50-year-old client, it was to, he ended up pivoting still in the IT industry towards security. And because security work requires a more holistic point of view to understand, hey, what are the gaps and so on. And he did this through, informational interviews, networking, and, figuring out what's the trend and whatever secure jobs, and just being really deliberate about upskilling for that. You basically preserve your career. He can ride it out now. But as for before, if he was to keep going the same path that he was going down, he could very well be eliminated by the younger competition, because his salary is 2 to 3 times of their salary easily to a young gun entering the industry. And so, from a company's perspective, why not hire 2 or 3 young guns versus, keeping someone in their 50s, right? Especially in high tech. So, yeah, so I think gaining that clarity is the key for everything, for the transition, for whatever transition you want to do.
I like that. And congratulations to you to help him getting out of his stuck zone, as I like to call it. And the
Yeah.
other thing is also what I really love, that was a very mind blowing for me, and that is mind blowing for my clients, is really this understanding that all the results you obtain in your life are actually the results of your thoughts. That whatever you think, you're going to become, you're going to generate your results. That is really becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you think about something, the more you're going to act upon that thought, and the more of the results you're going to get out of it is what you were fearing. So it's really interesting to actually be, and coaching is really about being observant of yourself, right? To mirror what your mind is telling you and helping you see how your mind thinks. And so I think it's really important to take that responsibility and ownership, and if we look at it positively, to actually understand how much power we have with our brains. Every time we decide to entertain a certain thought, that actually that thought could bring the results we want. So if you crack that, right, every time you're paying attention, what thoughts do I, because we have 60,000 thoughts per day. Yeah, so this is, our brain is a huge automation machine. And some thoughts we decide to pay attention to, some thoughts we decide to let go. We should never, repress thoughts, because the more you repress, it's like pushing, like a beach ball underwater. It ain't last. It's gonna just bump on your face. So we don't want to repress any thought, but we can also decide not to entertain some thoughts and just let them go by, observe them, be vigilant, but decide not to spend too much time on it, and instead decide, okay, what other thoughts I have in my head that maybe can support me and serve me better. So I think for all the people that are going through a transition, we can decide two ways. We can decide to entertain all the negative thoughts, all the stuff that is happening to us, and look at them negatively, or we can look at them like a huge opportunity, what life is bringing to us and showing us and giving us the chance to actually redefine, right, our life. Those people that have been let go, I know that if I say that, people are gonna hate me and throw tomatoes at me. But sometimes it's really an opportunity. As I said before, an opportunity you might have never been given if you stayed stuck, if they continued, pay your salary and let you be there miserable in a job that wasn't really, the real expression of your potential.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And on top of that, I'll add that, a lot of times that people, they think about something, that it ruminates in their mind, but until you take action and get more data, you don't really see the momentum. You'll still feel stuck. The moment you start, it's when the rubber hits the road that you actually see the change and you feel there's momentum. And that's really the whole idea behind getting stuck. It's kind of like a rock, right? When you throw a stone across the lake and you give it, a good spin, it glides and it goes a distance, right? If you throw a stone, like without that spin, without that momentum, it sinks.
Right.
And it's pretty much, that's the same analogy.
I love this.
And I love what you said about people, it's about framing. In Chinese, we have a word, I'll say it in Cantonese, ai gay, right? And it's actually a combination of ai means danger, gay means opportunity. And we actually put these two characters in the same phrase, because whatever there is danger, there is also opportunity.
I love that. I love that. And that's the thing, because sometimes, we talk to people and they might say, I've tried everything. And then you're digging a little bit deeper. Okay, what have you tried? And a lot of times it's just things they have thought about, right? They haven't really taken much action. And then, they're complaining that they're not getting further. It's really being conscious around, okay, you're taking action. When are you doing it? What exactly are you doing it? And are you honoring your commitment to yourself? This is what I really like to put it. Because sometimes we are very good at honoring commitment with others, but we tend to be a little bit sloppy in honoring the commitment to ourselves. So I like, I have this system of putting things in the calendar and really blocking time, because I feel like in this way, it's like I have an appointment with somebody. And even if it's just with myself, but at least I know that I can go back to, and I feel like I'm honoring, I'm taking action. Tony Robbins says, never leave an action scene without taking an action right away. You decide something, take immediately the first action. So you start getting momentum.
Absolutely. And I think, there's a regarding taking action, I think there's, a lot of what we're talking about, what's holding people back is fear, right? And I think, and I use this analogy a lot because I think it's really powerful. Fear keeps us alive. Fear has kept us alive as the humankind for a long time. Back in the caveman days, you would not wander out in the dark if you don't have a torch. If you have a torch, it's a little better, but you will not walk out in the dark in the jungle if it's because it's terrifying. Fear keeps you alive. Yes. Now, if you bring out a torch, it illuminates a little bit, but it's still kind of bad. But if you walk out in broad daylight, I mean, you're fine, right? You actually see what's around you. And a lot of times when we say take action, it doesn't mean, leaping before you look.
Right.
Sometimes it means doing the legwork to do the appropriate research, to follow a system, to do things in a way that, hey, I have a torch now, I can see what's around me. Or doing the research so that you feel like you're walking out in broad daylight, you know exactly what's in front of you, and it's not scary anymore. And so sometimes people yes, Tony, sometimes there's just the whole Nike, just do it, just leap, take the jump. Nice. That's important. But sometimes you jump off a cliff and that's just not a good idea.
I totally agree.
And so the taking action is taking informed action. And that is the most important piece, I think. And, clarity is the first piece, research and preparation and planning, and having a system that actually gets you to your destination is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw in another quote from Einstein, who says, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I would spend 50 minutes thinking about and planning for it, and only 10 minutes solving it. So what you're saying is absolutely spot on. Don't jump out of the cliff. Really start doing your research, think about it, investigate, plan really meticulously before you take an action. But then once you decide, because also if you've done your research properly, you're not going to go back and challenge your decision again. So it's really taking that decision, because it is an informed decision, as you said, and then stick to it, right? Once you take that decision, just go for it. Because the other thing is also, what I notice a lot of people, and I do that too, is this back and forth, right? You decide something, but you haven't really done that homework. So you're always challenging yourself again and go back and rethinking, maybe I could consider those other 2-3 options. And that slows us down tremendously, because we're just in this circle, which we go back and back and back, and we don't go forward. And then we linger in confusion, and we feel so depressed. So it's really important, as I said, really do the diligent work. Think about your why, think about why you want to do something, understand if you have the means to succeed, and then take the leap only then if it's the right thing. Because the other thing is that sometimes when we want to change career, we always have this thing of, the grass is green on the other side, right? I'm going to change company, and this company sucks, and I'm going to go to that company. It's going to be all fantastic. And the reality is that most of the time, that's not going to be true. If you don't solve your problems and your mindset problem in the company you're actually in, you're going to bring all your problems and your issues in the next company. And you might have the first few months, up to 6 months of honeymoon, fantastic, and then all the same problems will emerge again. So really making sure that you're working on understanding what are your concerns, what are your problems, understanding what is out of your control, how your sphere of influence, and work on whatever you can work on before you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. I want to expand on that a little bit. When I work with my clients, there's generally only 5 outcomes. There's only 5 possible outcomes when you work with a client. Number 1 is they adjust the job to them, right? So they're working, and perhaps their problem is setting boundaries. They're very nice to put other people's needs before their own, and they keep feeling they're taken advantage of. And it's because they don't know how to set boundaries. Well, and it's not because they hate their job. Their career is actually fine. It's just the people around them that's making them miserable. And it might be you, like, right? Like you said, if you don't know how to set boundaries, it doesn't matter where you go. People are going to take advantage of you. And so that's the first change, is adjusting the job to you. The second thing you can do is adjust to the job, which is building these soft skills. Perhaps your job requires you to be extroverted and you are an introvert by nature. Well, learn social skills, right? And upgrade in that respect. And that will make the job much more manageable. And you can actually perhaps even start enjoying it. And it may not require a career change. The other three options is, make a functional change. So either, you stay in a company, say if you're working at Apple, you work in HR, you want to switch to marketing, then you plan to make an internal switch to marketing. If you are, another change is industrial change, the industry change is, if you work in HR in one place, you want to switch to another industry. And the third one is a double switch, which is the hardest switch.
Yes.
And that's the one you got to plan for, which is basically doing a stepping stone switch, where you switch your industry and then you switch function, or the other way around. But basically, these are the only 5 outcomes possible,
right,
when a career coach works with someone in terms of making that transition. I mean, would you agree?
Absolutely. 100% spot on. Definitely. Those are exactly the 5 options and possibilities, and understanding, the why, what is it that you're after? What is the underlying problem is the first step. And this is really where coaching can help, right? I guess getting that clarity of who you are, who you want to be, and understand what your path therefore can be, it's really powerful. The other thing is that, going back to what I was mentioning earlier, I think what is really powerful is for people to understand and differentiate between circumstances and thoughts. So when we say, that person is taking advantage of me, well, let's look at the facts, right? What is that person really doing? And what are your thoughts around what this person is doing? Because those facts are really things that everybody, no matter who comes in and sees the scene, will describe it in the same way. That's a fact. Everything else is interpretation. So I think also, if you really want to be taking a different point of view over your situation, that's the first step you should do. So take a step out, observe the situation, try to be neutral about it, and understand, well, in the same situation, could I think different thoughts? Could I, look at the situation differently? Because maybe sometimes nothing needs to change besides the way you think about things. It's just really, so powerful.
Precisely. And I think when you are interpreting things, and framing is super important in terms of interpretation, whether the glass is half full, half empty. Facts are the glass is half there, right. But you still got to read it appropriately, right? And I think when it comes to someone's satisfaction in their job, whether they're happy or not, oftentimes it could also be a variety of things. It could be boredom. It could be anxiety. It could be indifference, like apathy. And and this is what we call in flow psychology, where the optimal state is where the challenge and your skill level is met. So if I'm playing in the NBA and I play basketball, I'm playing in the NBA, I would be miserable because I'll get destroyed by everyone. That'll make me very anxious. But if I'm playing with my son, who is 6 years old right now, I'll be bored. I would honestly be bored, right? He's cute and everything, but I'll be bored. And if your job is doing nothing but like just dribbling all the time on the ground, you would be apathetic because it doesn't matter. And so sometimes when we enter a job, at first that job, the optimal state of skill and difficulty is there, right? Oh, I love doing this because it's challenging, it's pushing my limits. But after 3 years, is it still pushing your limits? And have you sagged off into the boredom zone, right? And once it hits the boredom zone, that's where you're like, oh man, I'm doing this again. Well, what are you doing to find new opportunities? What are you doing to look for new challenges, to put you in that state of flow again? Because happiness doesn't come from money. The research in psychology has shown that if you earn $60,000 in the West, you're going to be happy. Any more money is going to have diminishing returns in terms of your measurement of happiness. Yes. But what really keeps you satisfied at work and fulfilled is that state of flow. Are you constantly in a state of flow? Are you constantly engaged? And that's the feeling of spending 5 hours on something, but you actually spend 5 hours on something, but it feels like maybe 45 minutes or 1 hour.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people, making that distinction, like you said, that distinction is so important.
I love that. And I also, write a lot of research around what drives motivation. And as I say, money is absolutely not the driver of motivation. Of course, it needs to be a minimum amount, like a hygiene.
Yeah.
But other than that, what it is, the motivation actually is driven by the consequence of your job. Is your job consequential? Is it making an impact? Are you responsible for your action? Are you improving yourself? Are you acquiring new skills that really motivates you? And it's really interesting how some people don't get that. So if you are in a situation in a job in which one of these factors isn't present, that's a great opportunity for you to go and talk to your line manager, because I'm sure the line manager might have opportunities for you to give you a new task that would challenge you and help you go back into the flow state. So I really think it's powerful.
I think there's also one bit I'd add to that, is that when you are, how should I say this? Oh, my brain just blanked out for a second. Sorry. I totally forgot what I was going to. No, I found it. Priorities. Priorities are super important. And when you want to look at what motivates someone, don't look at what they say, right? Like, people say like, oh, don't listen to what people say, look at what they do, right? But if you want to know what really motivates someone, what is the true driving force behind someone, you look at what they sacrifice, what they're willing to sacrifice.
Yes. What trade-offs you make.
Whatever trade-offs. And so, for example, like some people are like, some people don't care about their career. And if you come to terms with that, right, there's a lot of different voices out there that tell you what's the good life. Some people tell you, oh, you gotta have a career, you gotta, be totally fulfilled in what you do and so on. But some of it could be very much, well, my priority is my family and spending time with them. I don't care, like the money is secondary, the whatever accomplishments is secondary. And I just want to work a 9-to-5 job that, I can just pay the bills. And the highlight is my family. And that's what matters. And gaining that clarity on, hey, wait a second, I don't really need that career, because a career is not for everyone, right? A lot of people just work jobs, and that's perfectly fine. But you need to come to terms with that. You can't have everything. There's something you gotta sacrifice.
I love that, because actually that's actually how my turning point was, that I was sacrificing my family over my career. And then I thought, no, I got to find a different type of balance, because I want to be present here. I don't want to miss out on all the events and all the things that my kids are doing. I want to be here. I still want to contribute and really have a huge impact in this world, but I need to do it at my own terms, in a way that works for me, and I don't sacrifice the time with my family. So this is so important, absolutely. And I find it sometimes society puts a lot of pressure on us of what we need to do. We need to get married. We need to have kids. We need to have that job. We need to have that next career step. But the courage here is about looking at yourself and really thinking about what is important for me, not what people expect from me, but what do I want? What do I want not to have regret for in my life? And so this is really, I know it takes a lot of courage, but it is the reality, the commitment that you have to yourself, and the transparency and the authenticity you want to have with yourself, which is really beautiful. And this is why I think we don't spend enough time instinctively to get to know ourselves, right? We spend a lot of time pleasing others. And that's, again, comes from our origin of survival, because people that were belonging, that were in tribes, have higher chances to survive than if you were on your own, right? We're talking a few thousands of years ago. Yes. And that has still some relevance in the way we behave today. And we still are very social animals. But it can't be at the expense of your own well-being. If you're doing something just to please others, sooner or later, this is going to come out to the surface, and you're going to feel miserable, or maybe you already are miserable. So that's the time to really face it and make a change. There is this beautiful Chinese saying that maybe you know it in Chinese, even Cantonese, which is about the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The next best time is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think this really is so powerful to me, because it really makes things, of course, I could have made those decisions and maybe not go to law school or a medical doctor school and do the architect, whatever other career I could have done. 10 years ago, now it's too late. Well, it isn't. It's never too late. I know somebody that is in her 70s and she just decided to become a life coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
you are the
There's
limit.
this professor at Oxford, when I was in Oxford, there's this professor who started weight training at 70. She started squatting with the other gym bros and gym sisters. And yeah, I mean, she suddenly became 10 years younger within a year or two because she's actually putting in the resistance training. And I think one thing that I would say is I think it speaks a lot to our education system. I come from an education background. I was formerly a teacher, and a lot of my colleagues who are in counseling right now in education in secondary schools. And perhaps, of course, there's a huge mental health, anxiety, depression epidemic right now in the West. And that's where a lot of the resources have been put towards, because it's such a high profile, high priority thing. But at the same time, perhaps the most pressing question, the second most pressing question, which I think is probably the most neglected question, is, well, how about career counseling? Like, what are we telling the kids on, what is the meaning of life? How do you find meaning, right? Because there's the paradox of choice in a Western society. And I'm saying Western society specifically because Western society, we are very blessed to have so many resources around us, and there's so many choices. And we can have paralysis by analysis. The paradox of choice is when you have 60 things to choose from, it's very difficult to choose. I have some clients that I'm speaking with in developing countries, and for them, it's not even a problem. It's like, I need to make this work. I need to survive. I have to do this. It's not even a choice. And so I think there's a real contrast in, with abundance comes responsibility of making these choices. And oftentimes this responsibility can be very crippling, especially if you don't know what you want. Everyone's telling you different voices. A kid turns on TikTok and they see they see all these TikTok celebrities, all over the place. 10 years ago, it'll be like, no, not 10 years ago, like 5-6 years ago, it'll be Instagram. You see these Instagram models living the good life. You hear all these different messages. Education comes from like the industrial age. We're teaching kids how to be good factory workers. We need to update the system. And often, and it's a very important message that we really need, society as a whole needs to come to terms with, especially, given how bountiful things are here. I mean, I come from, coming from Hong Kong, a Hong Kong background, and, and working internationally in Asia and so on. Man, a lot of the stuff that, Westerners are dealing with isn't even an issue there. They just need to survive. Right. And so I think it's a very big picture that I just talked about here in terms of the paradox, but what it means to be happy, all these things, it's such a tough question. And I think it's a root question of the whole depression, anxiety, and mental health problem, at least one of the root problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about it forever. It's a really big topic, and maybe we should do another episode just on that, just on happiness and love. Also the comparison between Western society and some Western society, also within the Western society, are very different. But what I just think, I really love what you said about the schooling system. And I come from Italy. So Italy has a really old fashioned schooling system, in which people are still, need to read thousands and thousands of pages for every exam. And it's really about building that culture of knowledge, which on the one hand is really beautiful because we want to be enriching people with knowledge. But on the other hand, it's so old fashioned. And particularly, I find it so counterproductive to still have this dichotomy way of teaching, this right and wrong, where life is never right or wrong, right? I mean, we in coaching are much more opening our clients' eyes to the fact that there is no right or wrong. It's just a matter of perspective. There is always different ways of looking at things. And instead, all our schooling system is based on this dichotomy, right? You're saying the right things, you're saying the wrong thing. Instead of praising people for progress, they're praising people for results. So I live in Sweden now, and in Sweden, the system is changing a lot. The Nordics are very progressive in the way they're looking and challenging some of the systems. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how those systems really are going to evolve to help people and prepare them for life more than what we're doing today.
Well, yeah, I think I'll push back a little bit on what you said about there is no right and wrong. I think, you know, I understand that perspective, of course. I think there is right or wrong in terms of, you know, the science of, you know, how to shoot a rocket into the moon kind of thing, right? You can't just, you know, assemble whatever. I think there's also right and wrong in terms of how you minimize suffering. Like a lot of time, and this is, I think, you know, I come from a sociology of religion background, and a lot of the common theme amongst probably all religions is how do you minimize suffering? Because, you know, Buddhism, the very root is life is suffering. That's the very first tenet, life is suffering, right? And so there are ways to minimize it, such as being responsible, right? If you're being irresponsible and you just sit there and you just, you know, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer by, you know, realizing you're not fulfilling your potential. You're gonna suffer by letting other people down. You're gonna suffer by despising yourself. You know that you're living a lie, and you're gonna suffer for that. And so I think there is right and wrong in terms of picking up that responsibility and shouldering that burden and doing Sisyphus. I think it's Sisyphus, like pushing that stone up. Life is an eternal stone of minimizing suffering, because if you let go of that boulder is going to run over you, right? And so I think there is right and wrong in that respect, but of course a lot of it's interpretation as well. So I think I would nuance it slightly more than in that way.
Yeah. So I mean, I absolutely don't disagree with you. I think, you know, I think there is good and bad. There is, you know, there is positive and negative. There is happiness and boredom. There is a lot. You know, the world is made of opposites. I'm saying there is no right in a lot of things, because sometimes, particularly when it comes to relationships, and of course, when I'm talking about science, definitely in science, there is much more, you know, the right way of doing it. But in everything else, in social sciences, I think is very much around interpretation. So that's really what I was getting to. And then there is the other thing that I was, I don't know who said that, but I really love it, which is suffering is pain multiplied resistance to pain. So Jon, this has been a really, really interesting conversation. I think we could talk here really forever. Yeah, so where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about what I do, you can check out drjontam.com. I also have a YouTube channel, also called Dr. Jon Tam. If you want to learn more about specifically the career coaching that I do, the Career Clarity Mastery, check out the free training that I have. It's called freetraining.drjontam.com, and then you can just hop onto there, check out the training that I have, and just to learn what the complete system that I have for finding career clarity is, and, you know, how do you even get there.
Beautiful. And I put all the links in the show notes, so it's going to be easy to find.
Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you, Jon, and talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon.